To continue properly, we have to recapitulate. We have to go back over everything we've done before. Vivian hasn't been here before, and she doesn't know what she's missed. We've got to make her feel like she's missed something so she comes back next time. I never want to miss anything anymore. Okay, the purposes, we're studying the cosmic creation. And the purposes are, if we understand what the cosmic creation is, how it works, and what its ends are, we can better cooperate with it. It's on the basic idea that if we know what's going on, that it's much easier to go along with it and to participate in it. And then the second idea is basically that everything that is in the major cosmos is within us. And so that the same principles that create, sustain, change, and destroy the cosmos go on in our lives. And the more we understand them, the more we can understand and effectively live our lives. So the first thing we did, in the very first talk, we talked about creation in its purest form. We talked about creation in relation to consciousness, the absolute as consciousness. And in that very rarefied consciousness, we learned some things, but probably the most important thing was that it was way, way beyond our understanding, and humility should have been the product of it. So we took a little bit smaller, like Faust, rather than take on the whole macrocosm. We took on the solar creation. And last time we looked at some of the basic principles within solar creation. And we looked at them also in an abstract way. Looked at the ideas and not so much what technically took place. So we're now set to start looking at the concrete of it. But we're going to have to recapitulate some more. Because we've got to do exactly what happens in the cosmos we have to do in the talks if we want to do them, if we want to live them. We talked last time, we ended up talking about the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. And we're going to recapitulate that. And we recognized 1 as the symbol or the representation of being, plain and simple. It is. You can't put a limit on existence because it is. And then we said that within being, we divided within, or God divided within, between the known and the unknown that was going to become known. And that within the known, the unknown was taken as a possibility. And so that produced a triad of being, possibility, and actually known things. And the same thing, we said that there was a reflection also in the material worlds, which represent the unknown. That is completely unknown, could be unknown, could be known, and the becoming of knowledge. This is looking at it a slightly different way than we talked about last time. My recapitulations are a little strange. They're made up of what we didn't talk about last time. It's the same thing, though. And we saw these all tied together by the focus of consciousness, which actually actualizes things and brings them into existence. And there the two triads were focused on a central point, so that each triad alone formed geometrically a tetrahedron, and the two of them together produced like an hourglass configuration of two tetrahedra. Also, last time what we talked about were the two principles which run throughout creation. One is the principle of analogy, and that is how unity expresses itself through everything. The one is in everything because it remains indivisible. That is to say, as above, so below. Even though the three below, the three above, and the central focus form 7 planes of being, that even though there are those 7 planes of being, the unity is analogously manifest in each of them, so that the unity is never lost, even in the greatest ignorance of material form. The other principle is the principle of cause and consequence, which is unity maintained through differentiation between experiencing something and then getting perfect feedback from our assertion. All right, we've talked about those. Boy, we're going to look at that. We're already through 2 pages of notes. We're I think there's only 7 pages of notes. It might be a 1-hour talk tonight. We talked about the tree or the pole of existence. We said at one end the potential of consciousness wakened. That potential, we said, was time. And the potential within the unknown that can become manifest is known as space. When consciousness fills up the potential of being, it becomes spirit. It is the spirit that determines the nature of the times. Time itself can contain any number of spiritual states within it. And when spirit projects itself into space and that potential becomes actualized and our ignorance becomes tangible, as it were, it becomes matter. And these carry on indefinitely, and like all infinite things, they both have their root in the absolute. So that the absolute is absolutely spiritual and absolutely material. The absolute in terms of matter and space seems like the conception of a primordial atom where everything is so closely packed together and that everything then is spattered out throughout the cosmos in what is called the Big Bang, when it might just be the consciousness that is spattered out within that density that was there all the time. Okay. We've looked at we've said that the triad of spirit has the quality of will, the quality of life, feeling, and love, and the quality of actualization. We said that matter had the quality of shape or form, quality of vital life, and the quality of emotion. And these produce, should be 7 here, but I'm going to have to count to make sure I don't trust my lines when I put them on the board. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, a little more. And we're saying that in the higher realms, like the realm of divine spirit, that it is very, this isn't even the realm of divine spirit. that in the realm of divine spirit, that it is more purely spiritual and the quality of matter or space becomes insignificant. Whereas when we get down to like the realm that we're living in now, the physical world, the chemical physical world, spirit doesn't even make much sense. It's kind of hard to talk about the spirit of lead, for example. It doesn't make sense. Whereas if you're in your rarefied inner consciousness and you say, I'm in a great spirit today, or that I'm filled with spirit, that's altogether different. That, you know, the pole has a much different dimension at either end. Though there is spirit that penetrates all the way into space and matter, and there is matter that is within spirit, because the two are just two different states of one and the same thing, which we've been talking about all along. Now, these are called realms, or they're called worlds, or they're called states of being. If you call them a realm, it has more like a quality that is more spiritual, that is more of the spirit. And if you call it a world, it is something that has more of a quality of matter. You can talk about the matter of each of these worlds, or you can talk about the spirit of each of these worlds, and each gives you a different outlook. Now, so you might say then that when the consciousness of the divine is stratified into the different states of being, whether you call them realms or worlds, when it's stratified, it's not stratified like lake water, for example, or like sediment, where one is on top of another. So this kind of picture is not really a true picture. It's more that the deeper the spiritual realm, the more interpenetrant it is of the more material realm, and the more extensive it is. The quality that the material end of the pole specializes in and relates to the absolute in is in density, or in condensation, or in a quality of solidity and resistance. We even say of someone that someone is a solid citizen, because their deeds are something that you can rely on, sort of in the way that we rely on matter. And the quality of the spiritual worlds that they manifest of the absolute is the quality of rarity. Like the truth is something that it slips away from us very easily. It's very hard to maintain a consciousness in truth because it seems so attenuated and it seems so very subtle that we can be within the spirit and not really even know it. It's even the more powerful the realm is, the more subtle it is. So when we're talking about these realms, they are here all the time. And they form, you might say, the potential bodies of God. The potential bodies of God. It's like the ultimate potential is the time-space continuum. But between that and completely manifest existence, where there are actual concrete, I can't say concrete, complete manifestations, there is the state of the realms or globes. You know what I'm trying to say? That there's water before there's a fish in the water. Because the water is sort of like a realm. It lives there as a state of existence. And out of that state of existence, things come to life, whether they're plants or whether they're little animals. And the different spiritual realms represent degrees of consciousness or degrees of unconsciousness within the divine. And then within that, the actualized and the completed manifestations take place. So you see now, in the past we've been talking very abstractly. And now we're coming to something that is more like storytelling, only we have to define what the words are in the story. We have to name the characters before we can actually tell the story. So within these realms, within these worlds, which aren't always there all the time, it isn't like most people think that even if there were a gigantic atomic explosion and all of the living creatures died and there was nothing on the earth but earth, they think that the earth would continue on. That kind of conception is a materialistic conception. The divine is, as we said, the divine goes all out. And you can't go all out all the time, even if you're God. And God is very parsimonious, and nothing is wasted. So that when a realm is no longer necessary, it is no longer existent. You realize that what we're talking about here now, in the manifestation of the realms and the actualizations within the realms, this is a spiral, exactly like we're trying to do with these talks. We started out very broad, and gradually we're getting deeper and deeper, and we're getting more and more concrete until we're going to come right down to everyday living, right here and right now. And that's the way it is with the divine. Everything of a spiritual creation takes place in a progressive spiral. It's a principle that we're going to come to again and again. And it's very much like praying or meditating or whatever one does. You can't just do it linearly. You just find yourself knocked out if you do that, and it's purposeless. You're just throwing, like you're just throwing a lance off in the air nowhere if you just throw out a prayer and keep it going continuously and drop it. In order to be effective, at least for me, in order to be effective in a prayer, I have to cycle into it and get deeper and deeper, and it becomes, it takes a while before you actually can get in the spirit of praying. And so you have to cycle in, and then you relax back out, and then you cycle back in, and you can go deeper and deeper, and then you relax back out. And the same thing is true with the manifestations of the realms of creation. At the beginning of the creation, this stuff isn't around. Much to the surprise of astronomers and astrophysicists and material cosmologists, this stuff doesn't exist. It's there in potential, but this comes much, much later. And it's only very short-lived. What we take as the most real stuff and the most eternal stuff is very short-lived. It's not going to be around for long at all, maybe a few million or billion years, but that's nothing in what we're talking about. In fact, we can't really talk about time yet, and I'm not sure that we're ever going to be able to get to talk about time altogether in this course, because it's a very, very hard subject. Like, how do you tell the time of how long these things take? Now, there are three ways we can look at the actualization process of creation, or of evolution, if you want to call it. We can look at it from the viewpoint of spirit, we can look at it from the viewpoint of matter, or we can look at it from the viewpoint of the consciousness that is within it. If we look at the viewpoint of matter, it is called globes. That within the different spiritual realms in which we exist and which we take part in this creative evolution, there are globes formed. And these globes are the stuff of these worlds from a material point of view that represents, you might say, the central focus of consciousness of the divine. You might say, for in one way, the sun is all of the light that goes out in all of the directions, because that's still the sun. But the central focus of it is at a globe that we see out in the sky every day. But the sun itself carries on to infinity, because it's out there and out there and out there, and it's an enormous amount. I walked home today, and even in the cold, at 4 o'clock at night, when you'd walk in between buildings, even the sun striking you there had heat. You know what I mean? It was on a low angle, and it's down near the winter solstice, and you could feel its warmth on you when it was a striking thing. And if you think of that, all of that heat that's going out infinitely at all times in all directions, and all of that light and the brightness of it, it's the sun is, what I'm trying to say, the sun is universal, but the focus of it from a matter point of view is called a globe. Now, that's if you're looking from the bottom up, you might say. But if you're looking from the spiritual point of view, it is something, instead of being a state of matter and space, which is what a globe is, it's a state of time and spirit, and it's called a period. A period is a fancy way of saying a moment of consciousness. And then, from the viewpoint of consciousness passing through globes of matter and periods of time, there is a constant change. And this change is what produces consciousness. The experience of different globes of matter, whether we're creator or creature, and the experience of different periods of time within those globes of matter, that experience, the changes, produces waking consciousness. It's like if you walk into a room and there's an odor like my garlic breath. When you first walk in, you notice it. But after a while, you don't notice it anymore. It's only when there's been a change, when you've been in the fresh outdoors and you come in and you smell a plant or something in the room, it's the change that produces the consciousness. So the manifestation, again, the idea of the spirit is a circle. The idea of matter is a line. And if you put the two of them together and have circles that progress around a line, you have a spiral. And so, from the viewpoint of spirit, the changes of consciousness within periods seem like a spinning. From the viewpoint of matter, in relation to the globes, it seems like things are going forward in a straight line, that there is progress in that way. No matter how much we know that the earth is curved, the only way we still measure land is we make straight lines. We use lasers to make it perfectly straight and perfectly level. And so the experience of it from the material point of view, whether it be the straight line of a laser or from the spiritual point of view where we feel a spinning, a revolution, like every year as you become more peaceful with old age, I find that every year I can sense the spirit of the year as the seasons change. Not even so much as looking outside into the states of nature, but in the inner spirit of it all, what is behind it all. And so these, if you look at it from the viewpoint of consciousness, they're called revolutions. Meaning a turning, and a turning that has a change. Now, normally, when the mystery wisdom, as far as the cosmic creation is concerned, is spoken of, the globes and periods and revolutions are presented in a pretty materialistic way. We're going to do that, but I want to be very careful about the dangers of that. A period still is a period of time, and you can only understand it in a period of time. The best way, I think, to understand a period of time is to play music, and to play a large measure in music. You know, like, I don't know, a 12/8 measure of music in which you use all different sizes of notes. And in that, you can recognize that each measure is like a period in itself. You know what I'm trying to say? There is a spirit of time that is within a measure of music. All right, we all have pretty much experienced globes and revolutions. Okay, so we've talked about all of these things. We've talked now about the manifest forms are globes. The manifest spirit is moments of time called periods. And the manifest or the manifesting waking consciousness are revolutions, which are both internal spinnings and external revolvings. Okay. Now, we're done with the recapitulation. And before we can actually begin the story, we have a few more things to introduce. And one is one of the most important principles in understanding anything spiritual, and that is the principle of character. We're trying to burn certain principles into our consciousness so that we never forget them, or either that, or we're trying to awaken them from deep in ourselves so that we don't forget them. Last week, we talked about there is nothing dead in the cosmos. Everything has its own appropriate type of life. And that life has motion, and the motion has consciousness. But there is a quality to consciousness. And the quality of spirit as it is realized in experience is called character. The quality of spirit as it is realized in experience is character. We say that someone who can live by a high principle because they've experienced the truth of it, we say such an one has moral character. Or in another way, we say that in a play we have a character because the character of that dramatis persona is unique and individual, and it has a flavor that's all of its own. And that's a manifestation of a specific type of character. Some experiences have wakened up a flavor, or the creative efforts have given a flavor to life, and that is a character. Or we understand the character of someone in their works. If we see how somebody goes about doing something, it describes their character. Even the way someone walks is a description of their character. Or like if you listen to music, you know that it's such and such composer because the character is, you're looking at the notes. If you wanted to say it in terms of pure pitch, you could say that these notes are thus and so, and it's completely mathematical. But somehow there is something of the spirit that created them that it is very hard to kill the character of music or art or whatever one does from the way they go about things. So the character is, in terms of individualized expression, it is the quality of selfness. It's like the history of the creative and experiential things that a focus of the divine has gone through. The experience of spirit. Okay. As above, so below, or everything is in everything. Each of these states of being has a character. Each globe has a character. Each period, each revolution, everything in the cosmos has character. And the sooner, I'm a big one for talking to things. The sooner you talk to things, not cursing at them, I do a little bit of that too. So when I stub my toe on a stone or something like that, or a machine doesn't want to work, bam, 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 I talk to it. But the sooner we understand that the spiritual intelligence within something, its experience has a character, the sooner we can learn it. The sooner we can realize that. I have a friend who almost flunked out of all of her courses. She went to school to teach autistic children. She was terrible at it. She's never read an occult book. And she used to say, I don't care about Juniper and Mars and things like that. But she was a natural occultist. She was a natural occultist. And she, for example, would take children out of Central Colony and she would take them swimming. And they would, the kids would be afraid. And she would get them to experience the buoyancy of water. Or she would take them to a water fountain, and when they once realized the experience of water, either from having it running over them, or from drinking it, or from floating in it, she could see the lights go on. You know what I'm saying? That is the experience. There is a character that is in water. And the sooner we can attune ourselves to the character of water, or air, or the desire of love, or the thought that is pensive, when we understand those things, or when we can experience them, the sooner we do that, the more we can realize them. All right, I guess we have somewhat introduced some of the basic ideas. Now, boy, let's introduce the character of these things by introducing something altogether different. Last time when we were talking about the difference between black and white, we said that when you have a system of two, all you have is a system of black and white and various shades of gray, which is fine. You can make some very fine black and white photos and some very fine black and white movies. But when you have three, you have color. And the added dimension of the color gives you ever so much. It's almost overwhelming what you can do with color. So if we're looking at globes, periods, and revolutions as they take place in the different realms or worlds or states, if you want to look at it from a conscious point of view, these words are not, I'm not trying to use them as special buzzwords, though they may take that on after a while. I'm trying to use words that, to me personally, are the best in our vocabulary to point to the experience. We're going to talk a little of astrology. From the viewpoint of the periods of time, there is an application of spirit. And the spirit end of the pole is active. It's directive. It's moving, motivating. It's pushing. It is creative. It is expressive. And in that regard, the periods of time might be described by the positive, fixed, and common signs. They're like the positive common signs in that they're subtle and that they're elusive, but yet at the same time they're pushy, driving. They're like the positive fixed signs because they sustain the will to be, and they pour things out, and they continuously direct, is what the states of spirit are that are manifest in the periods. The globes, on the other hand, are like the negative fixed and common signs. The negative common signs have that very passive receptivity, such as like Pisces being a negative common sign. It receives everything. It's extremely passive. And that's sort of what the globes are intended to be. But in order to sustain on the matter end of things, in order to have memory, for example, I'm not going to go into it now because it's very deep and very subtle, but memory is the ability to hold an experience even after the experience is gone and the substance has gone back to its natural state. There has to be some kind of receptive and holding quality. So in the same, the globes, or all the states of matter, have about them, if we're looking from that viewpoint, they have not only the quality of receptivity, but there has to be a reasonable amount of resistance to hold what is received and to take form. So there is a fixed negativity, a fixed receptivity that will take on a spiritual impulse and it will hold it. The revolutions of consciousness are like the positive and negative cardinal signs. That is an active change or a passive change. I receive, now I give. I receive, now I give. The cardinal signs have the quality of changing. Now, I do this to express some of the basic ideas of creation using astrology as a shorthand. But I'm doing it for another purpose, because everybody could say, why bring astrology into this at all? You could say this is, you're just bringing in another thing, and couldn't this be said without astrology? Doesn't that just complicate things, and aren't you making a substitution for understanding by letting somebody think they understand something by using astrological terms? And the answer for that is no. It is not just a complication. It's not a substitution. Now we're talking about astrology much more different than it is talked about in astrology classes. Astrology is the indicator of character. There are, again, remember, as above, so below. There are basic character qualities that run through things. And we're going to see, by the time we're done with this, is going to be amazingly complex. And there are going to be things within things within things, and each leading to a wonderful, it's like going through a great book, and it, like each page takes you into a different state of consciousness, and it has the same characters in it, and some more things come out and come out and come out, and all of those things have the same, like, astrological rulerships. So astrology is the indicator of character. So that when you say something is Saturnine, or if you say that something is jovial or mercurial, you're not just using an archaic pagan shorthand that has some poetic value. You're talking about a divine principle, like from one of the 7 syllables of the name of God, as it is manifest in any realm or sub-realm or whatever. There is like if you look at the planets, they represent manifestations of specific pure character. And so the reason we're bringing in astrology to this is that astrology points to the character that is the spiritual underlay of all of creation. We're talking about astrology here as an initiate science and an initiating science. If you realize that there is a realm in the desire world, and the desire world itself is ruled by a given planet, and that sub-realm within it is ruled by another planet, you have an idea of how to focus your consciousness. And if you bring yourself up to the moral lesson, if you attune yourself or bring yourself to the pitch of that realm, you see in that realm. And maybe everything in that realm is all happiness. The way to initiation is being able to, by conscious control, bring your consciousness to a height of, you might call these vibratory levels, but that's sort of a coarse, gross way of talking about them. But if you pitch yourself to the character of any state of existence, or to the quality of any globe, or what the character of the time is in any period, you live in it. And when you live in it with your consciousness, you are it. You realize it, and you can create it. So when we're talking about astrology, we're not just talking about horoscopes, which aren't going to be around for too long. Horoscopes are only for this period of time when we're quarantined in the material world because of our misdeeds that kept us out of the garden from returning to the Garden of Eden. We need some kind of a symbolic framework to see what the spiritual worlds are like, because if you're initiated and you're living in the spiritual worlds, you look at something, not like you look with your eyes, but you like you look with your soul nature, and you say, oh, that's of that character, and you recognize it in the same way that you recognize a friend, or the same way that you recognize Bach's music. We won't need those kinds of indirect symbols like astrology. Astrology is very valuable now. It's an important thing. It can help us attune ourselves until we can do it within ourselves. But so what we're talking about here is we're talking about astrology for tuning into things. Astrology for telling what a given age of life is like. But if you use astrology correctly, even without a horoscope, and if you know about how the cosmic creation is mimicked within each lifetime, if you know that a child is 5.5 years old, there's a little bit of deviation here and there, you know what the character of 5.5 is like, because it's a manifestation. It has, there are periods within periods within periods, and it tells you how the cosmos is being recreated within the infant life. Okay. Sorry to get in pounding my fist in my palm, but it's very important. All right. Since we're trying to do this consciously, we're going to be working from the waking end of spirit rather than from the ignorant, unconscious end of matter. And now we're ready to start telling our story. And the name of the first chapter of story, the first period, did I skip a whole bunch here? I probably did, huh? No, I didn't, I guess. Guess I didn't. I sometimes do things in such odd ways that I don't even know what I'm doing with my notes when I get up here. So we're talking about the first period of time, which is filled by spirit. The first period of time is called Saturn. Now, this is going to sound like the alternate Wednesday. By the way, this is the last time this class meets until the 21st of January, which is a month ahead of where we would be if we had to go to university. And since we're probably going to keep running all the way until the 4th of July or something like that, we're going to need the head start. I'm going to use something that is used in baby elementary astrology courses. I'm going to use what are called keywords. This will be like you can take them out of an astrology book and read them. Darkness, resistance. That one may be misspelled, but I'm not sure. Sacrifice. Nucleation. Or you can call this or seeding. Mineral. These are all, if you look over the history of astrology, coldness, foundations, ignorance, harsh experience, hardness, selfishness, hate, material sensation, nothing like hitting yourself. Form, faith, depth, contraction. By looking at any basic baby astrology book or looking at the history of basic baby astrology books, you'll find all of these words very clearly associated with Saturn. Now, the way we're going to look at them is we're going to look at them as keywords. And the only way I guess I can talk about keywords is keywords are a focus for concentration. Like if you concentrate with your eyes on something, you can note things that weren't there before. When you see, when you once see it, then that was there all along. And keywords work in a similar manner. If you concentrate your mind, or if you concentrate your center of attention on the principles of each of these keywords, it opens up your consciousness because you can attune to the character that is behind each of these keywords. And we're going to look at each of these keywords that we, in our normal everyday consciousness, we look at these and they're pretty grim things, and they have everyday experience. When we look at them now, we're going to look at the keywords in relation to cosmic creation, and it's going to bring out a totally different meaning to them, but yet they're the same words, because the experience that we're going to be looking at could not be pointed to by any other words but these words. And that's the view that we're going to do. So we're all set to dive in and tell the story of the Saturn period, but not quite. It's absolutely perverse. It's like little children. If you're going to run a race, you say, on your mark, get set, go. Or they have the things like you're given 3 chances before you drown. You go down 3 times before you drown. So what we're going to do is 1, 2, 3, go. And to do that, we have to talk about something very, very profound. We have to talk about elemental states of existence. It is as though we were prepped for creation before we actually even entered into creation. And this but we weren't even we's. You know what I mean? We had, or it had to be prepared for the potentiality of we before that potentiality of we could be brought into existence to become we. It's like 3 little pigs. We. It's rotten. It's absolutely rotten. It's like let's introduce something more. It's going to come in much more full later on. We've said everything has life. We've said everything has character. We said everything is in existence. Everything is. When you put existence into something that has life and character, you have a being. And associated with all of these realms or worlds or states, whatever viewpoint you want to look at, are beings. Some call them gods, some call them hierarchs, some call them the heavenly host. And there are all different grades of beings. In our existence, we see the minerals, total all. We see the plants, we see the animals, and we see human beings. We see 4 kingdoms and a few million species within each kingdom. Well, some seers have counted as many as 40 million kingdoms. And some of them are of grades of consciousness lower than ours, but most higher than ours. And we'll start at the top. I don't know if I'm even capable spiritually of dealing with this, but associated with the first two signs of the zodiac, Aries and Taurus, are two hierarchs of being. Associated with Aries are the xenophim, from the same root word as our word xenophobic, meaning fear of foreigners. The xenophim were foreign to our creation. And the teraphim, meaning of the earth, as when we have a terrarium. For those that were going to have, or for that which was going to have the potential of becoming, it had to be conditioned in such a way so that it could have the spiritual potential of differentiation of selfness into self in potential. This was accomplished by the xenophim. And for that same being wrapped around to the other pole in matter and space, the potentiality to experience matter or to become matter and to have the ability to take form. There aren't even words in our language to describe the creation of that potentiality. That was visited upon us by the teraphim. And only these beings could do this because they were free. The freer a being is, the more creative capacity it has. The more talent we have made manifest out of the potential that is infinite within being, the more free we are. It's that way now. If a person has a trade, a person can go anywhere and they're free because they know that they'll be able to get a job no matter where they are. That same principle is manifest on a very, very high level. The teraphim and the xenophim did not have to participate in any which way in our cosmos. And that is because it was completely voluntary and it was by no means at all necessary to any of their evolution. That's the only way that preconditioning could have taken place. But in a way, they're both xenophim. They're both foreigners because that very same freedom and that very great spiritual awesomeness was such that it had to leave as soon as the work were done. Because if the teraphim and xenophim had remained here, their continuous influence in our evolution as an act of freedom would have kept things so rarefied that the cosmos never would have gotten off the ground, which means never would have gotten out of space-time. So, I don't know how that's makes it sound like the greatest things in life are hit and run, huh? But I don't know. I don't know. The reason I'm funny is because even the ideas are so rare that they're very hard for me to even grasp of. In some schools of metaphysics, they talk about these pre-differentiations or potentials and things like that had to be before the cosmos could come into existence and we as beings could participate in it. But it's very lofty. It's very lofty. We'll just leave it at that and say we've been shamed one more time. before this all took place, we were in bliss. We didn't even know we were we. We had a kind of all-consciousness that was with the consciousness of God, but that didn't make any difference because we didn't know God was God. We were in bliss. And in that bliss, it's almost like if we took the whole blackboard and drew a circle around an area. And that's sort of like, we'd say that part of the blackboard is conditioned just by the very act of drawing a circle around it, or just drawing the globular shape. We have to close it in order to be real, though. And that preconditioning took place, and we never knew we lost our bliss until the beginning of the Saturn period. And in the beginning of the Saturn period, we were immersed in the realms. We were immersed in the worlds. Now this is very hard to describe, but if you picture yourself laying on your back in space, spread out, and then forget your body and being completely spread out, and then suddenly it's like taking a poker and putting it in cold water, and suddenly your consciousness is turned inward and around. But this turning inward and around, this immersion in a realm of experience, was shocking, but it was a slow kind of shock. And everything was dark. It was a dark light. And the only thing that was there was the warmth of our sacrifice by coming into even the most rarefied of all spiritual states that a human being could now experience. The realm of divine spirit, which is where our will is, which is so subtle we don't even know when we're willing most of the time. We realize it mostly by experiencing it and still existing it. We get clobbered in life again and again and again, and from the experience we know that we exist, and that's our will. And we were immersed in that to begin with, but it was a sacrifice. We agreed, even though we weren't we yet, to be able to agree in that preconditioned state, we agreed to this immersion into it. Compared to the blissful consciousness that we were in, it is a realm of ignorance, a realm of darkness, a realm of cold, and we just balled up. And we balled up individually and collectively. When I say we, I'm talking again about the human beings, because in this course we're talking about us. Our human part in evolution. But at this time, we weren't humans. We were in a mineral-like state. But this mineral-like state was about the density of our willpower, as subtle as that is. Now, we're going to recapitulate. All of these words, we'll see. We'll come back to them again and again. Well, it's not going to be too long. We're almost all done. By the time we got all done with the introduction, the class was over with. Everything is in everything. Paracelsus, when he wrote his great book on alchemy, said there are 7 metals: gold, silver, mercury. Let's do it so it isn't confusing. Quicksilver, copper, tin, iron, lead. In a modern treatise on spiritual philosophy, if you look at the first page of Paracelsus' work in a modern treatise on spiritual philosophy, instead of stating there are 7 metals, it says there are 7 worlds. Divine Spirit. Oops, I'm sorry, this is World of God. Virgin Spirit. Divine Spirit. Life Spirit. Thought. Desire. Physical matter. If you like, you can relate them with planets, the sun, moon, Mercury. Makes a lot of sense out of Norse mythology, doesn't it? Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Saturn. The world of God is the world of the One. But now the same principle that comes back to us that came with the teraphim and the xenophim. That in the same way that the xenophim had to be free before they could do the highest creative work, the work of the God, of the divine, of the One, can only be done if it is extended above and beyond all of its creation. It's within creation, but it also goes beyond creation. Because being beyond creation is the only way that it can do it. You see what I mean? It has to have freedom in order to give creatively in manifestation or in limitation. Now, looking at more detail, what we were just talking about, the conditioning state where we were made potential spiritual beings is the second of the 7 realms. It's called the realm of Virgin Spirit. And that is the idea of God extended to all. That is to say, for us to become free and for us to become in the image of God creators, we also have to have a free vantage point that is unconditioned by matter or by experience. And what the teraphim and the xenophim did was produced the realm of Virgin Spirit out of the world of God. And from that came the worlds in which we exist. But these 2 realms the realm of virgin spirit and the world of God are always transcendent from the creative activity, and they are realms that are watching realms, you might say. That which does everything by appearing to do nothing, and that, though unchanged, is changed by everything. You know what I'm trying to say? So, for these transcendent realms to be separated away, these are the royal metals, obviously, gold and silver. The world of thought divided itself into ideational thought and concrete thought, and the physical world divided itself into the etheric and the chemical region. It's like saying, as above, so below. The kinds of differentiation that take place in the deepest realms of the spirit have echoes or overtones or undertones on the other levels. That isn't what is important. It's a wonderful principle, but it's much too deep and much too far beyond my capabilities to go in this type of class and still keep it together. In fact, I'm having a hard time keeping it all together as it is. So, the world of God and the world of virgin spirit always remain transcendent. And all of the evolution takes place within the region of divine spirit, the region of life spirit, the region of ideational thought, the region of concrete thought, the region of desire, the region of etheric vital life, and the chemical physical stuff. Now we have to go back to a principle we've talked about a long time ago, way back, and in the astrology classes. 4 is always the number of building. So to begin with, if we take divine spirit, life spirit, ideational thought, and concrete. Those are the 4 realms that in the Saturn period, the beginning work was done. Let's stratify them, but we have to remember that they're not really stratified, that they are within and beyond the deeper we go into the spirit. So, you might say, if you're looking from the viewpoint of matter, in the whole period of time, the revolutions of consciousness were between 7 globes on in 4 different realms. And that means that the first thing that happened was an act of will, and after that it became lively, and after that it became an idea, and after that it became a thought, and then it came back to being an idea again. It came back to the spirit of life or imagination, and then back to the will. And just like if you're in a prayer period, you cycle in deep and then you come back out again. But you cannot visualize this with these kinds of images. What you have to do is you have to see it that we took on greater and greater limitation. And with that greater and greater limitation, we became more outward and more material. And as we became more outward and more material, we became more concentrated into a smaller amount of space. and then we relaxed, and then came back again. It takes place 4 in or 3.5 in and 3.5 out. The periods are also sometimes called days of creation, but we're going to come to that a lot later. We're going to talk about more of this. So the whole period of consciousness, if you realize this is something way beyond our current experience. When we went through a mineral light state of existence, the cosmos was no more dense than a thought. No more dense than a thought. So we were expressions of an impulse of will, and then came out. Now these globes, the first globe is called Saturn. The same principles run all the way through. Second is called Sun. Third is called Moon. Fourth is called Earth. Fifth is called Jupiter. Sixth is called Venus. Seventh is called Vulcan. And these revolutions of consciousness, 7 times focusing in deeper and deeper and deeper into matter, and then 7 times relaxing, each of those has the same name again. Saturn, Sun, Moon. So the first flip through was Saturn. So the first time through, the beginning was a Saturn globe with a Saturn consciousness revolving through a Saturnine type of consciousness in the Saturn period of time. So that was obviously the pinnacle. That was the beginning of the beginning of the beginning. And that was the original immersion. And that was the basic concentration. And so all of the work that was basically done when we were mineral-like was done mostly in the Saturn revolution, the Saturn globe, in the Saturn period. Because all of the rest was sort of foreshadowed. It's like there are certain things that an infant does. Mostly shit and snot. There are other things that are foreshadowed in the infant. The horoscope of a child is very uninteresting because it's all only potential. It's like all of the other globes that have no manifestation. It's all potential. Okay. Just think you're going to be famous forever and ever. Turn and smile at the camera. And so most of the time the most of the work was done at the very beginning, and in a Saturnine way, we were very slow in our learning. Very, very slow in our learning. It came to us by harsh experience because we were immersed and we were separated and we were nucleated. In the same way that a stone exists within rock, and a molecule exists within a stone, and a particle exists within an atom, and an atom is within a molecule. We were nucleated like that. We were individuated, and we had position, and we were like globs within a glob. Now, to understand, we can't think of this in a materialistic way, that we went from one globe, and then we hopped off that one and jumped on another and jumped on another. It's like the Saturn globe morphologized. It transformed itself into the Sun globe. Because you're using the same matter, only you're just bringing it into a different the consciousness or the focus of the divine is just bringing it into a different realm and bringing it more and more. So it isn't just jumping around. It is actually taking and focusing it and making it more and more tangible, more and more concrete. It dissolves, and it is not, the realm is there, but the globe is not. It's only there in potential. And then, in the relaxation, the same globe appears as the Vulcan globe at the opposite end. That's a very interesting principle because this has a reflective symmetry, because the first shall be last and the last shall be first is a principle that the Bible is just filled with all sorts of statements that point to all of the ideas that are in here that are really wonderful, such that it's like driving down a road to visit someone and looking at the scenery and then driving back the other direction on the same road. I usually like to, when I take a trip, I like to take the same route back that I took going the other way, because then you see the same scenery from a different point of view. In one case, it is the consciousness of contraction, and you're getting more and more tense and concrete, and in the other way, you're relaxing back, and you see the same realm of existence from a different viewpoint. So in one case, you're trying very hard to use the will to condense, and in here, you're using the will to dissolve. And the will is like associated with Scorpio, like in the zodiac, and this is the ultimate force of creation and destruction. It's the will to be, or it is the will to just dissolve and let go. I want to move on a little bit. Okay, one principle that we have to, again, I want to put the principles at least on the tape, is that all creation begins from within and works its way out. Like if we take a house and then put an addition on and put an addition on, that's not the way that the divine works. The divine works, it always goes back to the beginning, and when it comes out anew, it creates something new within, and then that newness within works through the old creation that was there. In the cosmos, everything works from within out. All creation, the second principle is all creation is a matter of concentration and externalization followed by a period of relaxation and internalization. And outbreathing, and in that outbreathing, it is a creation of form, and then an inbreathing where there is a relaxation and an acceptance of spirit. All right, I've lost pacing. I want to go at a little bit faster pace. So then, in the Saturn period, everything was dark. And the only thing that differentiated was the warmth of our sacrifice. We went more and more deeply into what to us would have must have been a terrible, terrible type of cold. We were nucleated, we were differentiated, and we took on, through the experience of being immersed, we took on separate forms. And what takes place with our minerals right now is what took place with us. Our experience, because, mind you, there were beings that were above us, and they were fulfilling their evolution by working on us. And so, we were in a very analogous position to the minerals right now. If we look at the kingdoms that we can see with our physical eyes, we see that there are humans, we see there are animals, we see there are plants, and there are minerals. But what we see with our eyes is only the mineral form. That we cannot exist in this kind of existence except but through the minerals. And so by working on an atomic level on each and every mineral, we're working on the consciousness of the being that is evolving sort of like through the periodic chart. Of course, in our times, way back in the Saturn period, the mineral kingdom, because the whole cosmos was so simple, it was just an impulse of divine will and a simple imagination and a simple idea and simple thoughts. It wasn't as complex as it is right now, where we have a periodic table. I don't know how many elements, 100 and what? I don't even remember how many elements there are. But we gained our experience by taking form. And so the ability to take form and hold it, which meant a sort of passivity as well as a resiliency or a resistance, is the way we gained our evolutionary experience at this time, at least according to the creative story, the evolutionary story. But mind you now, our existence then was no deeper than thought. And as we've mentioned before, in last year's talks, for example, nothing like bringing in last year, and about 5 years ago I said this. But when we were talking about the different states of existence and the different types of clairvoyance and such last year, we said that the experience of thought is the experience of pitch. When you say that something has a ring of truth, or that that sounds right to me, so then we lived in a globe and in a form that was made up of like tones. And we were worked on by tones. And by taking these tones into us and experiencing different shapes as thought forms is how we were successful or unsuccessful. Now, a curious thing happened. A very curious thing happened. I don't know how to describe it. But even on this level, on the potential level, there was the potential for error. And that very same ability that allowed us to accept form, when we first were immersed, some of us didn't like it, though we had no individualities yet. And that not liking it caused us to remember what it was like in the bliss of all being without any waking conscious being. And that remembering of what it was like kept us from participating in the evolution. And rather than being formable like gold is formable now, we were thought forms that we took our own pitches and we echoed them back. Rather than taking on form, we became hard and echo-like. And so the cosmos was made up not only of the creative word and the overtone as it went through the different beings that were evolving, but there was a sort of a cacophony that was echoed back, that the same creation was emanated back to the whole cosmos. This is where this goes at the root of the myth that talks about Saturn slew his own children, meaning that the creations of the Saturn period were fragmented and destroyed in the creative process because of, even before we had a self, of being selfish. And we hated it instead of loving it, and so our sacrifice wasn't complete, and we didn't really warm up the cosmos as we should have warmed up. No, don't bother putting another tape on. This will be enough. We won't have to start. So, after experiencing that, our ignorance was too great, and some of us didn't take. And we'll just remember that for now. I want to just talk about the principles. And they apply whether you're doing a work of art, or whether you're learning something new, or whether you're just getting through every day. The first principle is, and it's a principle of the Saturn period, and that is, before you can learn something new, you have to forget everything that came before. You have to let go of it. You have to plunge into an ignorance. And you have to sacrifice what you had before. And that puts you in the ideal state for experiencing something new. In a way, memory is an inhibition to a proper development of something new. If you let go and sacrifice, and just if you're just trying to learn something completely new, you just have to plunge in, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying being foolhardy or anything like that, but that's an important thing. The second principle is, clearly, that we learned from the Saturn principle, adaptability is of chief importance. If we can take the adaptability and not cling to the past or not be anticipating the future, but take what is coming right now, then we're ready for evolution. All right. So we went through all these revolutions of consciousness, most of which we didn't do anything new in because they were all precursors of things that were going to come further on in evolution. You might say that in the same way that there was a higher potential that was given by the Xenophim and the Teraphim when we were talking about the region of Virgin Spirit, there was a reflective preparation for the future when we were unconscious and just sort of spinning over things that were happening to us that we couldn't learn. And finally, on the seventh revolution and the seventh globe, when we were at the end of the end, we were in a reflective symmetry to the beginning of the beginning. And at that time, the guiding spirits who started us and gave us the initial ability to take form by working on us, the same way we make snowballs when we walk outside, they were called the Lords of the Flame, sometimes called the Thrones. These were beings also that were completely free beings.